What if I told you that one young man with a microphone could become one of the loudest voices in America, that his words could inspire millions, infuriate millions more, and shape the future of politics and faith in ways no one expected? His name was Charlie Kirk, and his story, ended in tragedy, remains one of the most polarizing legacies of our time. Charlie Kirk's story didn't begin in Washington, D.C., or in some polished think tank. It began in the quiet suburbs of Illinois. Born in 1993, Charlie grew up in an ordinary American household. But while other kids were consumed with sports and video games, he was restless, hungry for debate, for ideas, for something bigger than himself. By high school, he wasn't just a student, he was a contrarian. He loved questioning teachers, challenging classmates, and pushing back against the tide of what he saw as political correctness. His restlessness wasn't rebellion for its own sake. It was a conviction forming early that truth was worth standing up for, even if you had to stand alone. In 2012, while most of his peers were focused on prom or college applications, Charlie gave a speech that would alter his trajectory forever. He wrote an essay for the Chicago Tribune arguing against liberal bias in high school textbooks. That single piece caught the attention of conservatives nationwide. It was more than just words, it was a warning, a rallying cry from someone barely old enough to vote. Suddenly, invitations rolled in, conferences, radio shows, political gatherings. For Charlie, this was no longer a hobby, it was a calling. At just 18 years old, Charlie founded Turning Point USA, a non-profit dedicated to mobilizing young conservatives. The idea was simple but revolutionary. Meet students where they were on campus and empower them to fight for free speech, limited government, and American values. What started as a one-man mission with no office, no budget, and no staff quickly snowballed. Within a few years, Turning Point had a presence on hundreds of college campuses. To Charlie, this wasn't just an organization, it was a movement, and he would become its lightning rod. On campuses across America, Charlie became both loved and hated. For conservative students, he was a champion who gave them the courage to speak up in classrooms where they felt silenced. For progressives, he was a provocateur who thrived on confrontation. Videos of his fiery Q&A sessions went viral, moments where he calmly dismantled a heckler's argument or where angry crowds tried to drown him out. Charlie thrived in that tension. The campus wasn't just a battlefield of ideas, it was the stage where he built his identity as a fighter. By his mid-20s, Charlie Kirk was no longer just a student activist. He was a national figure, appearing regularly on Fox News, writing books and launching one of the most downloaded conservative podcasts in the country. His social media following exploded into the millions. He spoke with the confidence of someone twice his age and with the urgency of a man who believed America's very soul was at stake. Whether you agreed with him or not, Charlie had become impossible to ignore. Charlie's rise intersected with the rise of Donald Trump. He became one of Trump's youngest and most vocal defenders, bringing youthful energy to the MAGA movement. For critics, this cemented Charlie as a partisan firebrand, but for his supporters, it elevated him from activist to statesman. He spoke at rallies, advised campaign leaders, and introduced conservative politics to a new generation. His proximity to power was no accident. It was the result of years of building, organizing, and refusing to be silenced. Charlie's influence wasn't limited to politics. He recognized the spiritual vacuum in America and launched Turning Point Faith, an initiative to mobilize churches. He preached about courage, morality, and the need for Christians to re-engage with culture. For him, faith wasn't separate from politics, it was the foundation of freedom. In sanctuaries and megachurches, Charlie urged pastors and believers to take their convictions outside the pews and into the public square. For some, this was a revival. For others, it blurred dangerous lines. But for Charlie, it was simply the truth. No voice that loud escapes without opposition. Journalists accused him of spreading disinformation. Professors accused him of stoking division. Protesters followed him from campus to campus. The more viral he became, the more polarized the reaction. To some, Charlie was a bold defender of free thought. To others, he was a dangerous demagogue. But if you asked him, the criticism was proof he was doing something right. He thrived on confrontation, and in that friction, his message spread even further. As Turning Point grew into one of the most powerful youth movements in America, the pressure mounted. Thousands of students looked to Charlie for guidance, Churches invited him as though he were a pastor. Politicians courted him like a strategist. Behind the scenes, friends said the weight of expectation was heavy, but Charlie rarely showed cracks in public. His voice remained sharp, his words unwavering. In his mind, the stakes were too high to falter. America, he believed, was in a fight for survival, and he was willing to shoulder the burden. Charlie didn't just stay on campuses, he built a media presence that rivaled legacy outlets. His podcast drew millions of downloads, his Twitter account sparked daily debates, and his books climbed bestseller lists. He spoke about God, politics, and culture with equal passion. For a generation disillusioned by traditional institutions, Charlie became a new kind of authority. He wasn't a politician, a pastor, or a journalist. He was all of them at once, and that made him uniquely powerful. By the early 2020s, Charlie Kirk had reached the height of his influence. He was speaking to stadiums filled with young people. Pastors welcomed him into pulpits. Lawmakers quoted him in speeches. Whether you admired him or despised him, there was no denying his reach. He had gone from a restless teenager to a household name. But with great influence came greater danger. And in 2025, that danger caught up to him. On September 10, 2025, Charlie Kirk was scheduled to speak at Utah Valley University. For him, it was just another night in a long string of events. But as he walked on stage, tragedy struck. Shots rang out. Panic filled the auditorium. When the smoke cleared, Charlie Kirk, just 31 years old, lay fatally wounded. News spread like wildfire. Supporters wept. Critics gasped. The nation was stunned. One of the loudest voices in American conservatism had been silenced in an instant. In the days that followed, tributes poured in. Churches held vigils. Students lit candles on campuses. Politicians delivered eulogies. But beyond the noise of the headlines, one truth remained. Charlie Kirk's influence would not die with him. His words, his podcasts, his organizations, these continued. To his supporters, he became a martyr for free speech and faith. To his critics, his absence left a complicated legacy. But either way, Charlie Kirk had achieved what he set out to do. He refused to be ignored. His voice, though silenced, still echoes. And for millions, that echo will not fade.